Welcome to another episode of Black Millennial Investors Money Mindfulness Podcast, the podcast where we dive deep into all things related to personal finance and wealth building. I'm your host, Andrew Dumas, and we have a fantastic episode lined up for you today, packed with valuable insights, actionable tips, and our weekly affirmation to get your money mind right. But before we dive in, let's introduce today's guest, Miss Tynesia Wilson, the newly crowned Miss Philadelphia. Miss Wilson is a native of West Philadelphia, a graduate of Temple University with a bachelor's degree, and she also has a master's degree from Temple in advocacy and organizational development. She has a number of other titles and accomplishments, including serving as the program coordinator for leadership and service at Temple University. And in her spare time, whatever there is, she's the superintendent of the African Episcopal Church of St. Thomas Church School. We don't have enough time to run down all of her accomplishments, but Ms. Wilson is a true advocate for economic empowerment, and I am thrilled to have her join us to share her perspective and her insight on financial literacy. Welcome, Ms. Philadelphia, Ms. Tynesia Wilson, to the Black Millennial Investors Money Mindfulness Podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. So I guess I want to start off today a little bit with asking you a little bit about your background and how you came to get involved in the pageant world. So first of all, let's give us some background on your background.
All right, cool. So pageant world, we'll start there. So during my undergraduate degree, and like you said in my introduction, thank you so much for all my accomplishments. But I started at Temple University in 2016. And my first pageant was in 2019, and that was the Miss Soca Caribbean Queen pageant. And so I was Miss Trinidad and Tobago. My family's from Trinidad. And so that was the first time that I was in pageantry. And funny enough, for that pageant, we had to interview for our positions, and they gave away the Miss Trinidad title to someone else. And a couple months later, she actually had to drop out of the pageant. And so they called me and they were like, "Hey, are you still interested?" And I was like, yes. And then I got into the pageant and then I won. And so that's pretty much like the start of it. After that, I won Homecoming Queen. So that was 6 months later after my first win. Following that was COVID, so there was no pageants happening at the time. And then in 2021, I won another pageant. And then after that, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to take pageantry more seriously. Let's look into the Miss America organization. And so that's when I found Miss Philadelphia, and that was back in 2022. So I competed then. I got first runner-up, and then I took a mini break, a little pageant hiatus.
Not too long, though.
Not too long.
Okay.
Not too long, because now it's 2024. I competed again, and here I am, Miss Philadelphia, the title that I wanted so bad. It's still so surreal when people are like, "Hi, Miss Philadelphia," and I'm like, "Wait, are you talking to me?" And it's like, "Yeah, I'm Miss Philadelphia."
Well, as a Philadelphia native, I'm going to backtrack just a little bit of background. As a Philadelphia native,
Yep.
I mean, so it's impactful that you can, rise to that, that role and have that accolade and accomplishment. Tell our viewers a little bit about your background in Philadelphia.
Yeah. So I was West Philadelphia, born and raised. So I went to my elementary school. I went to Ad Prima Charter School. For high school, I went to Central High, which a lot of people know. So if anyone's watching from Central, I'm 275.
275.
But I was involved in a number of different educational nonprofits, which pretty much pushed me into wanting to be inside the education space. And so I was a part of Stepping Stone Scholars, which was a big part of my life, which now is called Heights. And so now I'm a part of their Young Friends Committee, so leading that charge and helping in mentoring students. But everything I was a part of in Philadelphia, whether that was dance or cheer or education or just fitness, like whatever the case was, Philly has poured so much into me. And so to be Miss Philadelphia now and to have the opportunity to either go to different schools, work with different organizations, host different workshops for our community and for our students, it's like, Philly gave so much to me, and now I have the opportunity to give back, not just, as a community leader, but also as Miss Philadelphia.
Well, that's really beautiful. And then as Miss Philadelphia, I was really struck by your platform, on financial literacy, financial education. Mm-hmm. And so with your background and also being in the pageant world, I want to explore a little bit with you about what's the motivation behind that.
Sure.
For choosing financial literacy, financial education, which Black millennial investors, that's our entire mission, is to empower people of color to achieve generational wealth, but also to address frankly, the trauma of economic discrimination that has played a role in our prosperity, if you will. So I'd love to hear, your perspective and why financial literacy.
Yeah, so my journey in financial literacy actually started, I want to say, a little bit before COVID. And so I tell this story often, and this was also part of my pitch back in 2022. But I said, America runs on Dunkin', and so did I, until one day I checked my bank account and I was like, where is all my money going, right? And so that's kind of how it starts. And I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. We spend a lot of our money on food or just like frivolous spending, and it's always small. It's like $10 here, $8 here, $5 here, whatever, and it all adds up. So that's how it started for me. But I know for other people, their financial journey, it can start with like a life or death decision where it's like, if I just had a little more money in this moment, a lot of things could have been different for me. And so I'm grateful that it was like, oh, I'm spending all my money at Dunkin'. Let me take a second and really look at my expenses and look at my finances. But like I just said, for other people, it's not like that. It's, I'm getting ready to lose my home. I don't have electricity or gas to heat up the place where my children are sleeping, or I have to choose between going to the doctor or putting food on the table. So it's like, we see finances is so connected to every portion of our lives. Another thing that I was just doing research on, we see like a lot of divorces are from financial arguments or financial conversations that people are either not comfortable to have before the problem gets too large, or it's like, hey, why aren't we talking about finances? Why don't we have this language? Why aren't we comfortable enough to have these conversations? And you can see what divorces lead to inside of our families, inside of schools. Children are more likely to fail, more likely to drop out, more likely to experience things like sexual abuse or sexual harassment when they're coming from a single parent household. Right. And so with that being just one aspect that's connected to finances, we could think about all the other things that are connected to it. And so my platform, which is Teaching to Wellness, which does advocate for financial literacy, not just in our classrooms, but to bring the conversation to all conversations. Why aren't we talking about finances more? Why is it still such a taboo topic to ask someone, hey, how much do you make, right? Yeah. Or how much do people make inside of this industry, or whatever the case may be? Being able to have these conversations can change the trajectory for a lot of people. And it's like, if we were just comfortable enough to talk about it, right? Or if we had the language and the education to actually talk about it. And so those are the two things. It's either we don't want to talk it because we're not comfortable, or we don't have the knowledge to talk about it anyway. Right. And so with my platform, definitely getting inside of schools, getting into communities like, hey, finances is for everyone. Financial literacy is not just for the people at the top. It's not for people who don't look like you. It's for people who look like us. Right. And so that is my goal for not just being Miss Philadelphia. I mean, that is my platform right now. But that's something I've always talked about. And even back when I first competed, back in 2019, I remember I gave a lesson to students on entrepreneurship, and these were first graders. And so they were so excited. They're like, I'm going to teach y'all about this big word, entrepreneurship, that some of y'all can't even spell, but it's right up here. So let's talk about it, right?
Can they spell it?
It was up there. Yeah. It was up there for them. Like, y'all see the word. If you can't spell, it's okay, because when you see it again, you know what it is. So I'm telling them about entrepreneurship, and I'm like, hey, what do you like to do? Or what do you like to eat? They're like, oh, I like to eat pizza. And I was like, do you know how many sources of income? So I also taught them about that too, like what sources of income is. But I'm like, okay, you like pizza. Do you know you can make money by teaching people how to make pizza? Do you know you can make money by making videos of you eating pizza or making pizza? You can open a pizza shop. You can tour the world eating different pizzas, making reviews. And it's like so many different things can come from this one passion of yours. And that was also another thing I tried to show and combine with them, like, hey, entrepreneurship, money, this can all be fueled with your passions. And so I've given so many talks, like I said, from entrepreneurship to first graders to budgeting with master's students. And so finances is for everyone. And that's pretty much like my message that I want to share.
Well, and you hit on one really, I mean, many really important points, but having courageous conversations.
Exactly.
Because I think in our community, especially when people of color talking about money, talking about our challenges around money,
Mhm.
there's a level of shame attached to, hey, I'm struggling here.
Yeah.
But the reality is, many people are struggling
Yeah, they
here.
do.
And so you can be bold and say, look, I'm struggling with
Yeah.
my finances, and reaching out for getting guidance and support
Yeah.
from others. And that is really critical.
Mhm.
So who have you used, or what tools and strategies, or what mentors have you had that have coached you along
Yeah.
to get to your place of enlightenment,
Yep.
and being courageous
Right.
enough to really open up the
Yeah.
discussion?
So I'll say two things. So first, I guess the beginnings of it, I am Gen Z, so I'm a part of the digital native generation. So YouTube was actually a big thing for me. So I looked at a lot of financial tech or financial YouTubers, and I looked at a good amount of them and their different philosophies behind money. So I watch people that are like David Ramsey, who's like rice and beans, where like you should not be eating out if you don't have this much money in your savings, like very living extremely below your means, to watching other financial who are focused on investing, whether that is real estate or businesses or whatever. And so being able to look at different creators that focus on different things allowed me to have a more well-rounded vision of, I guess, how I wanted my finances, knowing that they've also come from different backgrounds or whatever their finances looked like before they got to the place that they were, and just being able to reflect that in my own life. So no, maybe I'm not at the place to buy $1 million homes and rent them out and like let that be my stream of income, but I do have the knowledge now, like, okay, like I know what real estate looks like, I know how people are able to invest in that, and I will be able to get there one day. So it's smaller steps that I'm able to take now, knowing the knowledge from all the different people that I watched. So that was the first thing. The next thing is just like looking at my parents. And so the way I grew up, we're blessed and fortunate enough that we never had to worry about, oh, like we're going to lose our home or we don't have food or whatever the case may be. Like our parents were always good with money, I guess, in that sense. And so even now, my parents bought the house that's next to our house. And so I'm able to live there with my brother. And it's like just the way that is able to set up generational wealth for us. Like I'm able to save. Now I can invest. Now I can think about other places that I could put my money so that it could work for me. And so when I have kids, I'm able to do the same thing for them. And when they have kids and when they have kids. And so my parents were able to inspire me in that way so that I know, okay, I have to do things so I can set up my children so that they're able to help their children. And so, and other things like for school, I took out student loans, like I had to pay for that and other things as well. Like obviously my finances went towards those things, but it's like this one thing that I know, okay, my parents were always able to put food on the table. Mm-hmm. My parents were always able to keep the lights on, always able to do those things. And so it was kind of just that drive. Like, I know that I also want to be able to do this right for my generations to come. And it's like, I have this mindset, other people should too. And then you can see, especially in the Black community, if we can kind of create this wave of this mindset, how that will make generations of the Black community look so much different, and their economic wellness will look different from, I guess, well, maybe what my grandparents will.
Well, yeah. And our grandparents in our history, they had different challenges, but something you said resonated about what you were teaching the young kids, which I see in you. Yeah. You're somebody who was, might say in my Caribbean accent, you had 3 jobs. But it's about really understanding, don't put, as my grandmother would say, don't put your eggs all in one basket. Right. So you have to have multiple streams of income or multiple streams of ways to generate income. And that doesn't necessarily mean working a job. Mm-hmm. It could be from investing. Mm-hmm. It could be, instead of going to Starbucks every day, put in $5 a day in an Acorn app that you can actually deploy and buy shares. Instead of buying a pair of Nike Jordans, buy a share of stock from Nike for $85, and that will keep on giving. Yeah. And those shoes will run out. Right. And so, but really having that consciousness that you've sort of talked about, really understanding that you need multiple streams of income. That's really important. Yeah. piece of advice, what's the most significant piece of advice would you give to the Gen Zs and the millennials and our and the boomers?
Yeah.
Because it's never too late.
It is never too
it's
late.
never too late. No matter where you find yourself, it's
Yep.
never too late to make a shift.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to those?
That's a good question. I guess my advice would be invest in yourself. That would be my biggest piece of advice. And what does that look like, right? Because people talk about investing automatically, like our mind goes to real estate, our minds goes to businesses, our minds go to those things. But like you can invest in you. So whether that's, like you just said, don't put $85 towards sneakers. You could put it towards a stock. You could put it towards a class to learn how to clean sneakers. You can put it towards, I guess, maybe if you do buy sneakers, how can you continue to make more money from that, right? Again, going back to what my lesson was with those students, you can make videos of it. There's so many ways that you can go from there. So I would say my biggest advice when it comes to finances is investing in yourself. Don't be afraid to utilize your funding in order to help you make more money. So whether that is taking a course in finances or, again, something that you're passionate about, right? Because job security is one thing that we saw with COVID. How many people were laid off? How many people were found without a job? And then we get to this place where we're like, the government is giving out the stimulus checks or whatever it is. And this is something I also talk about in my interviews when I'm doing pageants, about all the different solutions that either the government or different places come up with that are not sustainable changes to finances, right? When we're talking about, and this can get a little controversial, I guess, but when we talk about like EBT and food stamps, when we talk about the stimulus check, when we talk about those things that our community, I guess, becomes so reliant on, and there was a book that I read, The Color of Law, and it said how 3 out of 4 children will stay in the same economic bracket as their parents. And so when we think about these handouts that the governments give, and you have to stay below a certain income, right? And so when you start thinking of how that affects students and how it kind of, you maintain this status of being in poverty because you're like, okay, I'm getting this help, right? And this is not putting it on people who accept this help, but it's like, listen, we can't continue this perpetual status of staying in poverty in order to get help. There has to be a way out. And so, yeah, going back to my advice, investing in yourself, being able to come up with these different streams of income because it's out there. There's, I forget the number. There's like quad something. It's a big number of how much money there actually is, but it's out there for you to get. So go get it.
Yeah, but you hit on one thing that's really important. Investing in yourself is like leads into what is a critical component of Black millennial investors. It's about the mindset.
Yeah.
It's about shifting the mindset because once again, trauma, abuse from the financial ecosystem here in this country, as well as the habitual recipients of different types of handouts or stimulus, if you will, has sort of hampered, I believe, some people in our community for stepping out and reaching forward, achieving more financial growth and prosperity. So what's your take? 2 things. Have you had challenges or experiences that have shifted your mindset? And what types of advice would you give to people that want to change their mindset, their beliefs about what's possible if they've been in that systematic familial relationships for generations where, yet again, they're the third one living in government subsidized housing? They're getting what advice do you give these, especially these young males and females who are looking at you and saying, this is a woman from West Philadelphia, and so, because they're literally looking at you and saying, so some young lady looking and saying, you know what, I can be Miss Philadelphia.
You can.
But it's impacting their mindset from seeing you. But what emotional, spiritual, intellectual advice would you give to them?
Okay, so I guess when it comes to mindset and I guess psychological advice when it comes to money, money flows, right? Money comes and money goes, but you want to be smart, obviously, about where you're placing your money. And so I guess my biggest advice is that the emotional attachment that you have to money, you need to make sure you're able to manage it. And so I'll give you an example. Like a couple weeks ago, I got a medical bill. And it was like random because this thing that I had done was months ago. And I was where did this just come from? And so you have this idea, and this everyone talks about like having an emergency fund, right? Oh, like I have this money set aside that you're able to put towards expenses, but it's like they don't talk about the emotions that come with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I did not anticipate that I was gonna have to put $1,000 towards this thing. And so I was looking at the bill and I was like, oh my gosh, like I gotta let go of this money. And so there's always a moment where it's like you work hard for your money, obviously. So there's gonna be some, whether it's not the emotional attachment to the money itself, it's the time that you put in, it's the energy and all that. So I guess my biggest advice, the emotion in the relationship that you have with money, make sure that you're able to manage it, right? Don't let the loss of money or even the gain of money control your emotions, because that is when you'll lose control. So always maintaining control over how you feel about your finances. And how can you do that? You stay on top of what your finances are, right? You're looking at, okay, how much am I making? How much am I spending? Being prepared for all of those things, but consistently reminding yourself like, okay, if I continue to work, if I continue to increase my source of income, if I'm investing, if I'm being smart with my money, yes, I'm going to have expenses. Maybe some that I wasn't expecting.
Right.
It's going to go. But I know that the place that I'm in my relationship with money, it will come back. And so it's not going to affect me emotionally, because not enough people talk about that, right? People don't talk about the depression and the anxiety and all that things that comes behind finances that over 50% of Americans actually have this anxiety when it comes to even just the mention of finances, the credit, whatever it is. And so taking the time to build a healthy relationship with money and understanding,
And it's a relationship.
right? It's a relationship, and understanding that like this is a tool. This is a tool that I have that's going to get me to the next place, to get me to the next goal, to get me to the next step. And that's how you have to look at it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean,
Yeah.
because with the tools and the education, many of our workshops, we arm our young people with tools and types of apps and different things. But that's not the tools alone aren't it.
Yeah.
But it's really it's what's here,
Yeah.
and having some basically discipline
Yeah.
about looking at your money. Don't be afraid. Open that bill.
Open it. Yeah, open it up. Yeah.
Understand.
Yeah.
Open it, and then you can be proactive. Because what
Right.
you don't know really can hurt.
It can, yeah. And that's like that also lends more into that anxiety of it. It's like, oh, I don't want to look at my bank account. I don't want to look at this. Every morning when I wake up, I go to the gym, I do my morning routine, all that stuff, and as soon as I get in the office, I take some time and I look like, okay, what's my finances looking like? What are my bank accounts? Where are my savings accounts? What are my credit card bills? Like keeping check of all that will really help you with your relationship with money, right? Just like you have a relationship with a boyfriend or a girlfriend or your partner, like you check in on them, right? So you're going to check in the same way with your finances, and the more you check in, the more you can keep it in check, right? Yeah.
And so it can become a really good relationship.
Right. Exactly. Okay, so I saw that went out. But that's okay because I know this is coming back. I know I need to plan for this, right? You keep that relationship.
Well, yeah, and just taking off on that, but planning. What does planning come in?
Yeah.
And your advice for people or what you've done in planning, because your goals and dreams and desires. How does planning for the factor in? The ones looking at how does that?
Right. So I would say creating SMART goals is actually something that I've given a few lessons on SMART goals here at Temple. We learn about SMART goals being specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound, like creating those things for your money. So whether that is like, okay, I know I want to buy an investment property. That's actually something I want to do this year. And so I think, okay, I'm looking at the different homes that I might want to buy. I see, okay, this is 200K. This is 300K. I know now I need to do more research. How much do I need to put down? What are my my interest rates going to look like with the credit that I have? Like being able to get all that information will help me when it's time to make that next step. And so I would say like being specific with what you want. Knowing all of that information, because people will say, oh, I want to buy a home. I want to buy investment. I want to buy an investment car, whatever the case may be. And it's like, okay, well, how much is it going to be? How much is it going to cost? How much you need to put down? How much but people can't answer all those other questions, but you want this big thing, right? You have to break it down into smaller steps. And so that's just with investment. But even when it comes to like, oh, I want to go on a vacation. Okay, great. Well, for the ladies, you got to get lashes and nails and hair, all that stuff. Because we know sometimes vacation prep is more than the actual vacation. But that's neither here nor there. Like actually being able to sit
mindful
down,
about it, understanding those little things. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So like being able to plan for that stuff and to be even more like step-by-step process, like write it down, right? We could keep things in our mind, but thoughts are fleeting. Write it down. So I actually created like an actual chart of if there's a date, what my expenses are, what was the reason? Is it reoccurring? Did I actually need to buy it? And that's a check for myself. Like, oh, if I check no, well, why did you do it? Yeah. But it's already done, so now I know I won't do it again, right? But just making sure that you are writing things down, whether that is on a piece of paper, whether that is your phone, like whatever it is, like write it out so that you can see. And so in that way, especially when it comes to planning your finances or planning your expenses, you can see it in front of you and you're like, do I really need to do that? Maybe yes, maybe no. And that comes back to the psychology and the mindset that you have. Because, or even go further back to when, like, I was talking about my first step into financial literacy when it came to like, I was spending so much money at Dunkin' Donuts. Like every day, it's like $10, $12. Like, don't ask me what I was buying. I was buying too many things that I didn't need to buy. And it's like, when you're just doing it in the moment, it doesn't matter. But when you take a second and you write it all down, you're like, oh, wait, why did I spend so much there? Why was I there so often, so many times? And so that's something small, like breakfast, to something bigger, like investments. Yeah. And so being able to write it down and see it and really plan for it and get into the mindset of, do I have the money for it? Will I have the money for it? How will I get the money for it? And so that's pretty much like where I would say, like, when it comes to planning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, beyond the pageant, what's your plan for, I guess, advocating for financial literacy and education beyond the pageant world?
Beyond the pageant world, yeah.
But so once the pageant world is over.
Yeah. So right now, actually on the financial literacy committee here on Temple's campus, we bring different financial speakers. So we've brought people who oversee FAFSA to people who are doing insurance for the state, to housing, like all of those things. We've brought speakers, we've done workshops, stuff like that for our students. And so that's something I'm doing on campus that is outside of pageantry, because I've been doing that before I was Miss Philadelphia. But after, so right now I am getting my certificate in public relations. And so hopefully I do see myself working for a financial tech company or even banking or whatever the case may be, something related in the financial sector, and doing public relations for them. And what does public relations look like? It's messaging to the public, it's communication, it's event planning, it's creating these new campaigns that will get different key stakeholders involved inside of the mission of these organizations. And so being able to do public relations for different financial tech, whether that is online banking or PayPal, Venmo, whatever the case may be, and being able to, hey, like, we need to make sure we're targeting this audience, not for their money, but to be able to share education, right? And when we are able to educate people in being smart with their money, having a healthy relationship with their money, they can utilize different services in a better way, right? And so I guess like that is what's on my mind right now, because I really wanted to go into, if not public relations, whether that is like I just said, event planning or being a public relations specialist for a certain company, either being a publicist or a reporter or a writer, like pretty much anything where I'm able to get the message out, the importance of financial literacy.
Right. Many institutions have great philanthropic organizations. At most major financial institutions, they have the foundations, et cetera. They need people with a consciousness about the impact of their messaging and products and services to diverse communities. So that would
and even now, so like I know you said outside of pageantry, but I guess to stay in pageantry, because like that is what I'm doing now. So with Miss Philadelphia, one of our biggest sponsors is Republic Bank. And so they actually have a financial education program called Money Zone. So I'm super excited to be partnering with them in that way. Republic Bank has been a sponsor of Miss Philadelphia for years. They've been able to donate scholarship money to the organization, but being one of the first Miss Philadelphias to be able to engage with our sponsor in a different way, not just, hey, you can give the scholarship money, but also know, hey, what are y'all working on and how can I help? And so I'll be going to different schools with Republic Bank to talk about their Money Zone curriculum. And so I'm super excited for that, to be able to partner with them in that way.
Now, I mean, so you talk about partnering with them, and just
Yeah.
to finalize our discussion, what's the importance of community?
Right.
I mean, talk to us a little bit about the importance of community when it comes to financial literacy.
Right.
What your example of Republic Bank is a great example, but
Yeah.
what other types of community outreach or programs that, and what can, the masses do, if
Right.
you will?
Yeah. And so the thing about finances and financial education is that you do have to have a certain level, and also you need to be certified to actually give financial advice. But what you can do outside of being certified, you can talk about finances. When I go to schools, I talk about the things that I do. I can give information, like I said, talk about entrepreneurship. I'm not telling them, hey, you need to go start a pizza shop right now. That's not what I'm telling them. I'm like, hey, these are ideas and things that you can do. And so when it comes to community and being inside of your community, whether that is recreation centers, coming together, creating different savings goal and financial planning, and talking to your peers, oh, this is a goal that I have. And you're able to be held accountable by your community. And I think that's another thing, right? When we talk about community, it's not always just, oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to teach about this. I'm going to hear, what are you doing? What do you want to do with your money? Or let's sit down and figure out, well, you say you don't know where your finance is going. You don't know what you're spending your money on. Well, print out your bank statements and let's look, right? And those are things that you can do with each other, and not it doesn't even have to be a whole community thing. It could be in your household. It could be with your neighbors. It could be you're sitting out on the porch and you're like, girl, I don't know where all my money's going. Okay, well, pull up your banking account and we're going to look and we're going to see them, right? That comes back to being comfortable with having those financial conversations, right? And so if we don't have a level of comfort or a level of trust, then it'll never happen. And so I think that's really where it starts in our community.
Yeah.
Is recognizing that most people are not where they want to be. And that's okay. You're not living life by yourself. A lot of people have a similar story that you do. And so being able to sit and have those conversations hey, can you hold me accountable? Hey, when you see me in the morning, ask me if I made breakfast and tell me to go back inside and make breakfast because I'm about to go to Wawa and get some breakfast. So being able to do that for the people next to you will change a lot. Or you're like, hey girl, I'm gonna save $500 this month. You want to do it with me? Okay, every time we get paid, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this. And so creating community in that way and accountability and knowing that you're not alone in your journey, in your financial journey. It may look different from someone else's. Again, whether that is I want to save $500, I want to buy a house. At the end of the day, you're still making steps, right? You're still going to have to save. You're still going to have to know where you're putting your money. You're still going to have to know that information. So the steps look the same. The capacities and the levels might look a little bit different, but you can still hold people accountable regardless of what their goal is. And so that is a big part of community. I love talking to my family about finances. I helped both of my sisters one turned 18 a couple months ago, get her first credit card because I know how important it is to build credit. As someone actually just hit 800 credit score, so I'm super excited about that. But it's even looking at that, I know when I'm ready to buy another car, I'm just gonna go get it. Yeah. Or when I am ready to actually make that step to get my financial or my real estate property, I have the credit for that. Yeah. I have the saving for it. And prepared. So being right, I'm prepared for those things. And that's really where it's where it is. It's taking those steps so that when I'm ready to take a leap, I have everything. Yeah. I have everything that is built up so that I can reach that goal.
Yeah. Well, this is really beautiful. This has been a fantastic discussion. Yeah. I mean, we want to know for our listeners, how can they support you? How can they support you in your endeavors, both from a passion perspective, right, but also in your other initiatives?
Yeah. So I'll say a couple things. So I guess right now, I don't know when the podcast is actually going to drop, but I am competing for Miss Pennsylvania in June. And so personally, I'm looking for an on-stage sponsor. So our sponsors can range anywhere from $300 to $500. So if there's a company you'd like to be a sponsor of Miss Philadelphia for the Pennsylvania pageant, that is something that's one. The second thing, Miss Philadelphia in general is always looking for sponsors and donations. as Miss Philadelphia, I was able to win $6,000 in scholarships because of our amazing sponsors. And that's just not our bigger sponsors, but even the individuals that are able to give to the Miss Philadelphia organization. And so how you're able to give, you can go to missphiladelphia.org and look for the donation section. You can also message our Instagram, Miss Philadelphia org, so ORG. And hey, I want to give to Miss Philadelphia. How can I do that? And you'll get the information that way. The next thing, like I said, I love talking about financial literacy. I would love to go into different classrooms again, go into different communities, be invited to different events, even to just have conversations, whether it's not like, oh, I'm on a stage and I'm talking, but it's like, hey, Miss Philadelphia, can you come to this event and like talk to our students or whatever the case may be. Like, I'm always open to coming out and talking at different places. So that's a third thing. And I would say the last thing, like I said, professional development is a big thing inside of the Miss America system. So I'm happy to be a part of the system and be able to get different opportunities to speak on so many different platforms. So like I said, I'm looking to go into public relations or journalism or broadcasting. So any connections there for me would be amazing.
Well, that is really beautiful. Well, we see your light. We are just so thrilled to be a part of just the story and a little small piece by having you on our Black Millennial Investors Money Mindfulness podcast. Thank you so much. We thank our listeners today. I mean, we got some great tips today. I think the number one is speak up. Talk to your neighbors. Talk to your friends, your family. Don't be scared. Don't be ashamed. Go speak up because there's power in community.
There is.
And we're all having to navigate this in our own way. And so I think that advice is just really fantastic. So we thank you so much for
Absolutely.
that. And so thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Ms. Philadelphia, Ms. Tynesia Wilson, for joining us today. We'll be rooting for her as she goes on to the Miss Pennsylvania pageant in June. And also we will have on our website details about her upcoming pageant and how you can get in touch with her, as well as how you can support her in either a sponsorship role or in any type of advocacy work she's doing. So thank you so much for that. But before we wrap up, as always, we want to leave our listeners with, an affirmation, because we really believe changing your mind actually impacts, the results of how you operate from a financial wellness perspective. So we want to leave you with this. So repeat after me, wherever you are. I am conscious of my budget and aligned with my financial goals. Every decision and action I take brings me closer to financial abundance and freedom. So by incorporating this in your weekly, daily process, I think you'll see a shift. Repetition confirms, strengthens, and supports. And so just, do that. And you'll have that affirmation on our website, again, at www.blackmillennialinvestors.com. So that's all for today. We want to thank you so much. Tune in next week as we continue to explore money mindfulness. And in the meantime, and until then, keep your mind on your money and your money on your mind. I'm Andrew Dumas, and I'm out.
That was so good.